Hey YouTube world, Harvest is Plenty. Thanks for stopping by to check out the video. So today I got a good one for you guys. It's 30-day food survival. Maybe you could watch this video and pick up some useful tips and hacks that could get you and your family and your loved ones through SHTF or grid down. Now from the previous video that I did, I talked about testing things out, pressure testing things to see what the results would be in the real world. And that way you would know for sure for certain if it works, if it doesn't work, what you need, what you don't need, what you need to keep, what you need to get rid of, whether it's techniques, whether it's food, whether it's supplies, guns, ammo, whatever the case may be. Well, today we have someone who decided to do a 30-day survival food test. This is Drew from Dirty Civilian. I give him all the credit. I don't want to take any of it. I just want to share the video with you guys. I will put the full link to the video down below in the description box, so just click more and it'll drop down and it'll give you the full link if you want to see the full video from beginning to end. I'm going to pop in here and there, that way I won't get hit with a copyright strike. But as you're going through this video with Drew, just listen to some of the things that he say and some of the things that he tests out. If you remember when I talked about the rule of threes and I talked about going 3 days without water, and I said, well, water, you're going to need that more than anything else. And you're going to need way more water than what you realize. I remember in one of my old videos, I talked about people stacking beans and rice and things like that, but not stacking enough water. Because remember, you're going to need water for 4 things. You're going to need water to cook, to clean, to drink, and for sanitation. So you guys need to make sure that you prioritize those things. And if you don't have enough water stored, maybe you need to get to it. Or locate some water sources near your house or where you live at. Make sure you have some purification things that you can purify the water with. And same thing with food. I talked about freeze-dried food. If you have a dehydrated food or whatever, open it up, cook it. See if your stomach agrees with it. It may give you constipation. It may give you diarrhea. But it's best that you find that out now before in a grid down situation or the world collapses around you and that's all you have left to eat and you don't have any medicine to deal with the diarrhea, the constipation, the low energy levels or anything else that comes along with it, the nauseousness or whatever. So without further ado, let's cut to Drew and I will pop back in so I don't get a copyright strike. All right, let's get to it.
What happens when you eat nothing but emergency food rations for 30 days straight, an entire month? No takeout, no fresh produce, just shelf-stable survival-grade meals for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. My name is Drew, and for an entire month I put my body, sanity, and the toilets in my house to the test to answer a simple but important question. Can you really live off the stuff that we stash for emergencies? And more importantly, should you? You see, preparedness is not paranoia. It's a responsibility. Whether it's a blackout, a blizzard, or something bigger, being a prepared citizen is about having the skills and the supplies to take care of yourself and the people around you. Food and water is step one, but what kind of food and what does it actually do to your body and your mind over time? Well, stick around because I documented absolutely everything. My meals, my energy levels, my mood swings, my water consumption, fuel consumption, to cook everything, and even the weird stuff nobody likes to talk about like digestion and yes, all the bowel movements.
This is where the fun begins.
Also, you don't have to guess if food rations are built for survival or just sitting there collecting dust on the shelf. This is the 30-day emergency ration challenge.
So when it comes to long-term storage food, this is 15-year, 20-year, 30-year food, dehydrated or freeze-dried. There are so many options today on the market. I mean, you could pick stuff like Ready Hour, Nutrient Survival, My Patriot Supply, Legacy, Mountain House, Augustin Farms, so on and so forth. There's just so many options out there. Now, our body wasn't made to eat this stuff for a severely long time. This is just calories that we're packing in to keep us going, to give us some type of energy and some type of nutrients so we don't starve to death or whatever the case may be. I did a video about another food challenge that I will link below to show what happens to the body and the effects of the body when it starts breaking down and going into starvation mode. But anyway, he didn't use anything like canned goods. He didn't use any fresh vegetables from the garden for this test. He only used the long-term foods and MREs, which stands for meals ready to eat. So let's jump back in and see what happens.
So here are the rules for the challenge. I must eat 3 meals a day for 30 days straight. I must track caloric intake of every meal and track it by the day, week, and month with a goal of about 2,000 calories per day, which is the minimum recommended. Now, I timed this project to start right around the time I had to have surgery.
Oh my God, I almost died!
Which meant that for at least a week or two, I have to be relatively sedentary. I couldn't lift too much or do too much rigorous activity. So as I present this data, one huge variable, which is individual activity, is actually a constant. Now, 2,000 calories a day is plenty for a sedentary lifestyle. If I was hitting the gym, out hiking or rucking or doing some sort of strenuous activity, I would need more calories because I'd be burning more calories. So keep that in mind as we go through all of this.
I took a bunch of painkillers. They're about to kick in, so I'm ready to go.
I also have to track how much water I use to cook, clean, and drink throughout the whole process, because that is the minimum amount of clean water I should also stockpile along with this kind of food. Now, to track this efficiently, I'm using 3 48-ounce Can of Provisions Nalgene's with their blank decals. And every time it gets filled up, it gets another tally mark, and I'll convert the ounces to gallons at the end of each week. One for cooking, one for cleaning, because yes, that is important, and we'll get into that more later. The one for drinking, I added a Human Gear Cap Plus adapter because I ended up spilling a ton of water drinking out of wide-mouthed Nalgene's. I can't stand it. I hate it. I also have to track how much fuel I use to cook this stuff with. Now, why not just use the stove or the microwave? Well, for fun and for science. And if we're talking about a world in which I have to eat this stuff as my primary food source, then that world could very likely be one where electricity is just not a thing. This is a big point for owning a grill and a few cans of propane. For this, I used a mix between a Jetboil and the cheapest camp stove I could find on Amazon. Now, if I'm ever out of town on a project or away from the house, I can supplement these meals with my choice of an MRE, Mountain House, or a Ready Hour food brick. Wait a second, that means you're gonna have meals left over at the end of the month. Yes, but it provides some good data points as to how other popular emergency meals stack up in comparison to the 1 month supply. What vices can I have? Coffee and nicotine. I have 1 bag of freeze-dried emergency ration coffee that has to last me the entire month. And the nicotine use has to be severely limited to the point of only using it to track whether or not it actually works as a good hunger suppressant.
You sure about that?
For the coffee, I use freeze-dried Franklin's Finest, which has a 30-year shelf life. And for nicotine, I use good old-fashioned Zen. Now, for all you Alp guys who are like, you gotta change over. Listen, I live in the middle of nowhere, Tennessee. I can't even find it on the shelves, so back off. I also have to track my mood, energy levels, any kind of digestion issues, and there were a lot of those issues, weight gain, loss, and any other type of physical or mental factor. I also have to make a list of tips on how to make all of this more efficient and easy for other people so that they can make the most of what they have if they ever have to do the same thing. So with that, let's dive into the experience. The food. Okay, let me be honest about the food. These are freeze-dried meals, so they're never going to be as tasty as fresh food. And I've seen plenty of people comment about how this type of food, if you have to eat it for any extended period of time, you're gonna wanna absolutely die. And that's part of the reason why I wanted to test this. Well, it was actually pretty decent, at least most of it. The issue wasn't how does it taste, but rather the fact that there's not a huge difference in the taste of all of it. Now, in first world countries, we derive a lot of our pleasure from the taste of food. And I've spent some time in other countries and a lot of time in the wilderness of this country, and I've spent a lot of time being absolutely broke in my life. All those experiences have kind of taught me to treat food as sustenance and not to look at it as a source of pleasure. And that was very true for this entire experience. Some meals I enjoyed, but most of them were just filling. And that's an important thing to remember if you're relying on emergency food rations like this. Now, what made it difficult in this instance was watching my family eat delicious home-cooked meals or takeout and not being able to join in. Eggs, bacon, sausage, pancakes, PB&Js, deli meat, pizza, all that stuff, watching them eat it and I couldn't partake absolutely sucked, but it was a good reminder that this is for sustainment, not pleasure. Of all the different types of food that come in the 30-day supply, there were some that were great, there were some that were good, and there were some that were absolutely terrible. Let me talk about that real quick. Now, all of these options were the ones that I thought tasted great. Mainly the creamy Alfredo pasta, which they did not include enough of. Creamy stroganoff comes in at a close second. The cheesy broccoli and rice soup, black bean soup, surprisingly absolutely delicious. You can also make this and store it on your own pretty well. Cheesy broccoli and rice soup, creamy chicken flavored rice. This was phenomenal. Homestyle potato soup, traveler's stew was surprisingly good. Orange energy drink mix. This is basically just like Gatorade mix or some electrolytes. And then for breakfast, the best one was the Maple Grove oatmeal. Now, these were the ones I would consider good. Long grain white rice. Next would be the lentils. My favorite of these good options were the buttermilk pancake mixes. These actually ended up being very filling because it's a solid that you're putting into your body. Now, the foods that did not taste good at all, let's start with the powdered whey milk. In its defense, it's powdered whey milk. It's not supposed to be necessarily good, but especially if it's not refrigerated, you're drinking it down and you're just telling yourself, I'm purely doing this for calories and nothing else. This was the worst mac and cheese I've ever had in my entire life. It was flavorless. It was just not great. It's basically just pasta with nothing on it. But the absolute worst was strawberry flavored creamy wheat. As far as MREs go, these are the ones that I ate over the course of the month. I enjoyed all of them. The beef patty with jalapeno pepper jack, the beef strips in a savory tomato based sauce, it was pretty good. Beef stew, absolutely delicious. Spaghetti with beef and sauce, and it was phenomenal. Beef goulash, pork sausage patty with maple flavored, it was pretty good. The pizza slice, pepperoni, which I didn't know how good it was going to be. It was actually pretty decent. Now, the best part about MREs is the fact that you get more than just an entree in it, right? Let's take this one, for example. On this one, I actually got Skittles with it. Like, are you kidding me? This was an absolute, like, just joy. I mean, talk about uplifting your spirits. A maple muffin top, not the kind of muffin top you're thinking about, but this was delicious. The beverage powders are hit or miss. Smoked almonds, which were good. And then you have your actual entrees and, you know, granola mix. Within MREs, there's a big variety of things that you can get in them, and that is what makes them so special when you compare them to like the large batch freeze-dried meals. Now, one thing to remember about MREs is the price. They're usually about $9 a piece. You can find them on Amazon, which we've found before for like on sale for like $4 per meal. So in a case, you know, it's a little bit more expensive. Now, these were the Mountain House meals that I had. They were all delicious, every single one of them. I love Mountain House stuff. These are the Pro Packs. These typically have a little bit more protein in them than your normal Mountain House. I do think they're a little bit pricey for what they are. Of the 90 meals that I ate, 77 were the standard freeze-dried rations and 13 were MREs or Mountain House. And that's about 4 days worth of meals. I looked forward to those meals because they were, one, easy and fast to make, unlike all the other stuff, and number two, absolutely delicious in comparison, and there's a big variety of stuff in those. However, those supplemental meals were way more expensive per meal, which we will get into later.
Now, if you have any long-term food supply at your house or wherever, you may not have the choices that you have. You may not use MREs, you may not use Ready Hour or Mountain House. It's not necessarily about what he used. It's about what you have and what you will use, and have you tested it out to see how does it taste, what's agreeable with your stomach, you know, how long does the food last before you get hungry again, just things of that nature. So get the food out, cook a little bit, test it, pressure test it, get ready for the real world. You can use a different variety of things, and I will come at the end and talk about that. All right, let's get to cooking.
Cooking. Now, on day one, when I opened both crates of the food supply and looked at everything I had available, I saw that some foods were clearly for breakfast and others were for lunch or dinner. Others were supplemental, like the whey milk and the orange drink mix, which is basically Gatorade. I will say, I was surprised to see that all of these were batch meals. They were not individual meals like MREs and Mountain House that you can cook quickly. Big oof. This makes it very difficult to plan around because now you're using more water than you planned to make multiple servings without a real way to preserve them if you're not using a refrigerator, which I did not, by the way. There were specific measurements of water needed per X number of servings, how many X cups of the raw food would turn into X cups of the cooked food. It was very confusing, but keep in mind, all of the water had to be clean water. Now, thankfully, I have over 400 gallons of clean, drinkable water always in reserve, but for this video, I just used tap water for the sake of efficiency. Suffice to say, cooking all of this stuff was a lot, and pretty quickly into it, I realized that this is going to be more of a pain than just boiling up some water and pouring it into a bag and letting it cook for 5 minutes. So week one, my first big realization was a jet boil is just not going to cut it. It took forever to cook a single meal with one of those things, mainly because they're designed for boiling water, not for cooking food. And it's really easy to burn your food to the point where there's nasty food sticking to the cup, to the jet boil, and it's just, it doesn't cook efficiently, and it's a huge, huge pain to clean. Ultimately, you end up using more water than is necessary. If you're not careful when boiling, you're gonna lose water on the boil as it evaporates. it was a pain. So by week 2, I decided I needed to upgrade my cookware to make this a much better process and experience. If you ever have to do this, here's what I recommend. A cook stove, a ladle, measuring cups, a large pot, and containers to store the food. Now during week 1 and week 2, I mainly just ate single course meals. In other words, I just had a bag of mac and cheese or just a bag of potato soup. But that was pretty miserable, and I knew it would get pretty bad pretty fast if I worked through all the tasty meals in the first couple of weeks, and by week 4 I just had to eat like 19 servings of lentils. Remind me of how much I hate my life right now in 20 minutes.
Oh, thank God.
So I started cooking multiple batches. If I had to do this again, and if you ever have to do it, this is my recommendation. Open up both of the totes and set aside all the breakfast foods and set aside all of the liquids and soups. The liquids and soups are best for lunches, and set aside the really solid meals for dinner so you can go to bed on a full stomach. It makes a big difference. So by the end of the challenge, for one meal, I would have a bit of lentils, a bit of mac and cheese, or rice, a bit of Alfredo pasta. It made for a much more satisfying meal. The other thing about cooking you should think about is the time involved. I did not expect this. Boiling 5 cups of water is not fast on a cook stove. Cooking up an entire batch of food often took around 30 minutes. So cooking up multiple batches meant an hour and a half of your day is just spent on cooking. I'm not used to that. I haven't done that in a long time. Now, some of you may already do that. It's just something to consider. The good part about cooking up multiple batches is your food does go further. In other words, you may only have to cook once every like 3 or 4 days. But again, if you don't have a way to preserve that, you're kind of hitting your limit after 3 or 4 days. Now, I've eaten Crunchwrap Supremes that sat inside of a hot glove box for 2 weeks, and it was just fine, and I had no problems with it, but not everyone's digestive tract is like that. One thing to note about preserving your meals is whether you have a refrigerator or not, it is going to cool down. And so if you want warm or hot meals, you will have to fire that pot back up every time you want another warm meal. And that is more fuel, that's potentially more water because it's more cleaning. Now, one good thing to remember is that the Army Field Sanitation Manual says there are 5 F's to sanitation: food, feces, fingers, fluid, and flies. If your food goes bad and you eat it, you are going to get sick, and that is going to be a further drain on your resources.
Now, when it comes to cooking, how many ways do you have to cook food during a grid down collapse? You need to think about that. Hopefully you was able to pick up some tips and hacks from this video, and maybe look at other videos on social media, YouTube or whatever, to find some things, and then pressure test it. Don't just get the gear and have the gear and the cooking stuff alone. You got to test it. You know, most people that I know, they just want to have just a barbecue pit or some type of propane grill. But if it's freezing cold outside, if it's storming outside, you may have to come inside and cook. So think about that. What do you have for cooking indoors? What do you have for cooking outdoors? You know, do you have, if you can't cut on anything that's electric, can you make a fire to cook with? And is it safe for indoor use? Think about all these things now before the collapse happens. Let's move over to water and see what happens there.
Water and fuel. For all the meals combined, I used 11 gallons of clean water just to cook. So to be safe, I'd suggest always having at least 15 gallons on hand to cook with for a month of this stuff. One of the companies that we're really good friends with, who we consulted with on this project, is Cana Provisions. On their website, they have a water data worksheet that is free to download, print off, and it can help you plan to have enough water for you and your whole family if you ever have to do something like this. So check that out. Now, fuel consumption was actually very efficient. I was pleasantly surprised. I used 2 Jetboil fuel tanks that are 8 ounces each. I use that mainly for coffee and small batch meals like oatmeal, and I use 3 16-ounce Coleman propane tanks for the rest of the meals. Now, considering that 4 days of the meals throughout the entire project were MREs or Mountain House, I'd say a reasonable amount of fuel to have on hand would be 1 can per week per person when preparing this kind of food. And as a rule, I didn't use any salt, pepper, butter, oil, or anything else to enhance these meals. But I did break that rule a couple of times just as a test. For a few meals, I did add in a bit of butter and a bit of salt and pepper just to see how much of a difference it made, and it was very, very significant. Not to mention the fact that having salt in your body is just a good thing in general, especially when you're, rationing stuff out. So definitely stock up on extra butter, salt, pepper if you ever plan to need this stuff. It will make a world of difference. Never forget that your body and your brain need salts and fats. So yes, it affects taste, but it is necessary for your body to function correctly. Cleaning. Okay, first of all, why does cleaning matter? I'm a dude. I don't always wash my hands after I use the bathroom. I don't always thoroughly clean a glass after I drink out of it. Sometimes I grab a dirty spoon out of the dishwasher because I'd rather not walk over to get a clean one. Sometimes I just take my daughter's spoon that she just used and I use the same thing. Just ask my wife. I'm a dude. I'm disgusting.
It's an older code, sir, but it checks out.
But when it comes to cooking and washing your stuff, it does matter. It's a health issue and cooking efficiency issue. Cleaning stuff is inherently annoying. I can't stand it. And cleaning stuff with cold, non-pressurized water is the worst. So whenever it comes to cleaning all of your stuff, I ended up spending a lot of time and way more water than I expected cleaning my utensils and my pots and pans. Every time I'd cook, I'd spend probably 5 to 10 minutes just cleaning. That may not seem like a lot, but when you add that on to the fact that it takes at least 30 minutes to cook, it's like basically an hour out of your day is spent on eating a single meal. It is important to clean your stuff because old food can make you sick. It absolutely can. And if food gets caked onto a pot from cooking, the pot just doesn't cook as well. It can take longer, and now you have old food cooking off into your new food, and it's not a great situation. You can do it a couple times, but if you do this long term, you're probably eventually going to get sick. Now, over the course of the challenge, I used about 5 gallons of water just to clean with. And that sounds like a lot to me, but it is what it is.
So guys, as I said before, you will need a lot of water, way more water than you think about. Because water will be used for cooking and cleaning, drinking and sanitation. Now remember, he's by himself in this challenge. He hasn't included his family. No wife, no kids, no cousins or brother-in-laws or in-laws or grandmas or best friends. It's just him. So think about the number of people in your household and the number of people that haven't prepared that's just going to show up at your door knocking, saying, hey, I'm sorry I didn't prepare, but I'm starving. I don't have any food. I don't have any water. And you can't just leave me out here to die. We may be a blessing to a lot of people. So think about the extras, the stragglers, the people who will be ringing your doorbell or banging on the door because they need food and water. Think about all of those things. If you don't know where to get water from, you might want to start searching the areas now in your neighborhood to come up with a plan. And if you find water sources like in rivers, lakes, ponds, streams, and things like that, you will need to purify it. So think about that as well, because if not, and you drink some bad water, you could get sick. Dysentery set in very fast, which will cause diarrhea and a whole bunch of other issues that could probably kill you. In addition to the diarrhea that may come from eating this long-term food as well. So let's dive into the health section and see what he's talking about, or what did he uncover doing his 30-day test.
Health. Okay, this is a big one. Before I started this, I consulted with several doctors and EMTs because I was considering getting blood work done, similar to how Morgan Spurlock did this in his infamous Super Size Me documentary, which I absolutely love and was an inspiration to this. They all said they felt it was pretty unnecessary for a 1-month test on this, so I opted not to. They did all say the biggest issue I would probably run into was my gut and digestive health, and that if I ever saw blood in my stool, to stop immediately. Well, I can say this, they were 100% correct. My digestion was not great, and that's the understatement of the month. Now, several of my military buddies said I'd be laying down brown rock logs for like an entire month, and said that MREs are actually only supposed to be eaten for a max of 15 days straight.
I'm going for it.
Tell me I don't give a damn. Next stop is Vietnam, and open up the pearly gates.
Daddy's back.
Taking dumps under pressure, man. That is our Iceman's Achilles heel. Bread's our Achilles anus.
One of our buddies, Paul, Doc Pollock, he even attributes his IBS to living off of MREs when he was in Iraq. Well, for me, it was the total opposite. There was not a day that went by where I did not have some form of diarrhea. That is right. Every bowel movement for an entire month was as slick as water.
Harry?
Be right out!
It was not a good situation by any means. Mud butt, slick cheeks, taco tail, chili trench, butt lava, fire chute, spicy saddle, wrecked rim, you name it. I'm a 4-week veteran of the 2025 gastrointestinal war. Thank me for my service. Actually, you should thank my family for their service too, because they suffered from my slick status as well. We have 2 bathrooms, and it was not uncommon for both of them to be no man's land.
Oh my God.
Thankfully, we only had one casualty, but it was my favorite pair of underwear. So because of all the diarrhea, I was often very dehydrated, though I drank 15 gallons of water over the course of 30 days, which is, by the way, the bare minimum recommended for a sedentary lifestyle. I lost 8 pounds. Now, considering the fact that I don't have a lot of weight to lose, I'm not a huge guy, that's actually pretty significant. And this can be very dangerous, and it's a great reason to have salts and drink additives into your preparations for this exact purpose. Now, on week 4, I kind of had enough. I was actually kind of worried I was going to start popping Hemis. And so I did take one anti-diarrheal pill because I was concerned that if it got any worse, I would have some pretty serious issues and I would have to stop altogether. And I will say that that one pill helped a lot. It kind of stabilized. It didn't completely solidify, but it did stabilize what was going on down there. And if you don't have anti-diarrheal pills, you can always start a fire, collect some ash. The white ash will do the same thing as an anti-diarrheal pill. And if you're ever, you can just put that into your drinking water. And just remember, white ash, not dark black ash. White is tight, black is slack, if you ever need to remember that. That is an old bushcraft hack that we learned from our buddy Mitch in some of our SEER training, and it does work. As a shameless plug, we do sell Cana Provisions decon kits on our website that do include anti-diarrheal pills. I definitely broke into one of those. Now let's talk about my mood, because it is probably very closely linked to my my bowel movements. Overall, my mood wasn't terrible, but it wasn't peachy either.
How would you say my mood has been since I started this thing?
Horrendous. You're the grouchiest Grinch.
I was annoyed a lot. I was hangry sometimes. I had a bit of a short fuse some days in there. In fact, 2 days in particular, as I recall, I remember being an absolute menace to everyone in the house, especially around dinner time. But there were 2 things that really helped with that. Vices, coffee and nicotine. They are great vices that serve a very, very specific purpose. When it comes to hunger, they can be lifesavers, no joke. The coffee I had was not delicious. It tasted like hard, dark coffee, which some people love. I personally like a little bit of whole cream, but hey, it's coffee. And it hit when I needed it to. I had a total of 24 cups of coffee throughout the entire month, and it was very nice to have. Not to mention, coffee is an incredible commodity to have in hard times. Now, nicotine, okay? Nicotine has got a bad reputation over the years since it's usually linked with tobacco products. Over the course of this month, I used 6 cans or 90 pouches of 6 milligram pouches of nicotine, pure nicotine. Now, I specifically use it on days when the food was just not filling, and it definitely made a huge difference. As a hunger suppressant and overall mood booster, there are a few things that compete in a healthy way with nicotine. Most days I didn't use any. Some days I used a couple of pouches, and then a few days I absolutely loaded up on them. Double, triple, even quad decking the gummies for maximum hunger suppression and laser focus. It's a heck of a drug.
Now think about all the things that occurred to Drew during this 30-day challenge, and think about how that might affect you. And if you had family that also was going through these issues. Imagine if everybody in your house was dealing with constipation or diarrhea just from eating the food long term, and the serious problems and health challenges that it could cause. So how do you supplement that? You know, do you have a garden? Do you have any type of fresh food, canned goods, and other things that you can mix in with the long-term food? You know, this is a good test. And it allows you guys to take the experience of Drew and other people who have went through this test, and you guys can learn from them of what could be done healthy-wise and what shouldn't be done healthy-wise. In addition to the low energy, the cooking the food and all of these things, the diarrhea, think about fighting now. Because remember, there's a lot of people who will be coming to your neighborhood who are not friendly, who are not peaceful, you know, God-loving people with the Holy Spirit within them. They will be coming to rape, rob, and pillage. So if you're dealing with upset stomach and nauseousness and headaches and mood swings and diarrhea and all this other stuff, how do you plan on getting outside and fighting and defending your neighborhood and defending your house and defending your family, you know, amidst all these challenges of food, water, health, fuel, darkness, and everything else? See, it's not going to be paradise that they've been selling to people on the internet. Buy these 20 things and you will survive. Grit down. You know, get these 20 items and this is all you need to survive. No, 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 no. You're going to need way more than that. And that's why I say get out there, meet your neighbors. There's strength in numbers. It may be a day where you may get sick and you can't get up and fight. You can't come out the bathroom and fight because you've been sitting on a toilet all day. And so you're going to need your neighbors to get out there and fight for you. Or vice versa, they may need you to go fight for them. I mean, just think about all of these things that I'm talking about, that I've always talked about. The communications plan, your security plan, know your neighbors, strength is in numbers, pressure test, your food, your gear, everything. But most of all, you guys already know what I'm going to say. You need the salvation, the love, the grace, and the mercy of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. You need his protection. You need to be covered under his blood so he can make your neighborhood like Goshen. For those of you who don't know what Goshen is, when Egypt was hit with all those plagues, he told the children of Israel, go over here in the land of Goshen, and nothing will hit you over here. No plagues or nothing will come over there and deal with you. You're in the land of safety. You need to be covered by the wings of the Lord. You know, so that's why salvation is important. To save you from not only from destruction, but to save you from the things that's coming, to protect you and your family. To try to make all the rough days smoother. If you haven't, you know, met my friend, his name is Jesus Christ, because we all need a personal relationship with him. Now is the time. I love you guys. Christ Jesus loves you too. Until my next video, may the good Lord continue to bless you and your family.